He was born into one of the most successful families in self-storage, but you'd never know it by the way he carries himself. And today, he's helping his father's company grow exponentially. This week on Stories Behind the Door, brought to you by Kiwi 2 Construction, we welcome the Director of Operations at the Feldman Companies, Jordan Feldman. Excited to jump into this one today. He's Jordan Feldman. I'm Thaddeus Campbell. Before we get too far, I'm going to give a shout out to our exclusive advertising partner. Very happy to welcome Kiwi 2 Construction to their supporting the show. Very thankful for Wayne Woolsey and his team for jumping on board and helping to support this podcast. Without further ado, a guy I've known for quite a while. We first met in October 2022, which is quite a while for me because I haven't been in storage for much longer than that. I met him down in Florida at the SSA show in March of 2022. And something that jumped out at me from the beginning, Jordan Feldman, and I've shared this with you before, but I'll continue to share it, is just how genuine and kind you were to me, someone who is brand new in storage. So before I go anywhere, I'm just going to say thank you for being who you are and the way that you act. And we'll dive into that a little bit and maybe where that came from. I start the podcast off the same way every time. I'm not breaking tradition for you. How did you get involved in the self-storage industry?
I love it. Thank you for that. I appreciate those kind words, Thad. And I got involved in self-storage. I was born into it pretty much. My dad, he's very well known in the industry, and he's been building self-storage for 25 years. Growing up in a house where all we do is talk about real estate, and he'd talk about his real estate deals that he was working on ever since I was in middle school, high school, ever since I could, start understanding the language a little bit, because there is a little bit of a language to the real estate industry. And I remember being in high school and, in high school back, I guess 9-10 years ago, back when I was in high school,
I'm laughing right now because it was 35 years for me. So a couple minutes ago for you.
I'm not saying good. I'm old or anything, but
no, you're young. That's good. Enjoy it while it lasts.
It's crazy. Time flies. Back when I was in high school, you'd have to do a summer internship with the school, and it'd be a program that, at least my school did it. And I had to do a summer internship, and my dad told me, he's like, hey, what do you want to do for your summer internship? We sat down, we figured it out. We said that, he said that he was building a site in Dixie Highway in Miami. He said, if you want to get involved in real estate, maybe you should intern with the PM. So that's what I did. I started interning with the PM, going out to the construction site in the summers, and I was out on the site with all the subcontractors and the construction workers, learning how they actually go out to the site and build the site, which was really cool for me. And I'd come home and I'd be like, these guys are working really hard out there, and in the summers in Miami, it's actually incredible, how hard they're working. You're in the office, you're putting the deal together, you're working with you're in the air condition. These guys are actually on the site. So that's how I got involved in self-storage. So I thought that was a really cool experience. And ever since then, just been going out to the construction sites, going to the office, and just, learning about the different steps in self-storage.
Love that. So you go do this internship. Take me through the journey from high school. Where'd you go to college? And did you know from that point doing the internship that eventually you're going to come work with your dad?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to be in real estate. It's something that I always wanted to do ever since, he started building more and more projects. I thought it was a really cool thing, and always wanted to be in real estate. Went to Mass Academy in Key Biscayne for high school. Went to UCF in Orlando. Studied real estate as my major. And just, learning about, the different steps and, what it takes to build self-storage. There's a lot of different steps that it takes to build self-storage, and it takes a whole team. So I just always thought it was really, really interesting. I like how, have to work with the civil engineer, with the architect. You have to develop the plans. And you have to go to the city, get your approvals. You have to build the projects. It's a whole long timeline for, a self-storage project to come to fruition. And just always thought it was interesting.
I
honestly.
think you said something fascinating there, which is the timeline, right? Like you're 9, 10 years out of Mast, you know, 5, 6 years out of college. You're just now starting to see some of the early projects you worked on open up.
Right, right. I am. So when I first started working with my dad officially out of college, we were doing 3 or 4 projects a year. Now we're doing 6 projects a year. We have 12 projects that are existing projects that are different stages in lease up. We've built over 3.5 million square feet of self storage. We have another 5 that are under construction and another 5 that are in the development stages. So, building a lot of stuff. We're staying very, very busy. And
Which is remarkable, by the way, and I want to ask you about that. This is going to be the third question I ask, and I'm going to lay them out now because I'm old and I'll forget if I don't. But we're going to talk about that because you guys have been ramping up the number of projects you're doing as
Mhm.
the total number of developments has dropped by over 50% since last year, which is nuts, right? But you guys are still having success. So I want to pick your brain about how you've been able to do that. The second thing I want to touch on is you talked about that, and you guys have a heck of a team down there. I've been fortunate enough to meet a bunch of the guys that are on your team. I want to talk about how you and your father have been able to build that. I'm going to go back to UCF for a second, though, because I actually have interviewed Scott Frost, and you were at UCF when Scott Frost was the coach still, I think. You follow
Right.
football at all?
Yeah, yeah. And then when I was actually in UCF, Scott Frost was the coach, and we were
Correct.
undefeated for 2 years in a row.
I am old enough that I lived in Nebraska when he was playing for Nebraska still. So I've actually met Scott Frost when he was a player, when I was a TV anchor way, way back in the day when you weren't even thought of yet. So I thought that was cool. You picked a really good time to be at UCF. It was an exciting time for the football team.
Totally. My first 2 years were incredible. So much fun. We had tailgates, we'd go out to the games.
You're not supposed to say that because you weren't 21 yet when you were in your first 2 years of college.
Yeah. I was going out to the tailgates.
You're just eating, just food.
it's just eating hot dogs.
I love it. All right. I wanted to sidetrack for a quick second. I'm glad Scott Frost is back at UCF because he kind of didn't do so well when he went back out to Nebraska. That being said, I want to come back to the team you guys have built at the Feldman Companies. You talked about it, you kind of alluded to it. You need a bunch of people. There's a bunch of different things that have to happen in order to make a self-storage development work. Your father was doing one deal a year for many years early on in his career because he was pretty much doing it on his own. You guys over the last few years have been able to build what I consider a really strong team of mostly young guys. Talk to me about how that happened and what have you guys done in the hiring practice to bring the type of people that you've been able to bring onto your team?
Right. And it takes a team to, monitor and, build all these different parts of self storage. We like to work very collaboratively. We have, our acquisitions, we have finance, we have construction, we have our development silos, and we run it really tight. We're an office of 13 people. And, we've got a young core. My dad is like the old bull. He's 57. I don't like to call him old, but
He
he's 50.
doesn't act like he's old in any way.
He's got a
Big
lot of
Mitch brings the young guy energy with him for sure.
exactly. And a lot of our guys on our team are, they're younger. Everyone wants to grow. Everyone wants to build more projects and do more deals. And, we have a young core that's sort of, we're all very aggressive and we want to grow the business and we want to do more deals. So I feel like that's what gives us our energy to do so much and build so much product and get our name out there. So I think it's a lot of our team, our young core, and I think that's what, gives us our energy.
So anything that you guys, I don't know if you've talked to your father about this, maybe not, but it strikes me that as I think about Matt and Justin and Santi, it's like every one of them has a personality and every one of them is outgoing. What do you guys look for when you're bringing somebody onto the team?
When we're looking to bring people onto the team, I think we want to have, drive. We want people that are going to want to grow with us, that see the vision, that are going to be able to, just good energy and be able to fit into like our office environment. I mean, we run it sort of like a frat style, I guess you could say. We're very tight. We work collaboratively. Sometimes I'll go into the construction room and ask about some construction questions. Acquisitions will be working with the finance team a lot. So it's being able to have that energy that we have in the office.
Of that. And you kind of alluded to this, but I want to dig a little deeper because I mentioned this, right? And I think in 2023, there were 1,360 self storage sites delivered. In 2024, there were 1,260 sites delivered. So over, 1,300 a year on average for 2 years. This year, there's 560 under construction. I'm going to thank my friends at Radius Plus for those numbers.
Right.
You guys in an environment where it's gotten much tougher to underwrite deals to pencil, where it's gotten much harder to go get bank financing, and so you're seeing a drastic reduction in the number of sites under construction. You guys have gone from building 2 or 3 sites a year to now under construction on 6. What has been the secret to the Feldman Companies being able to grow like that?
I feel like the secret, I mean, I don't want to give up our secret sauce. I'll tell you what I can tell you. I'll tell you what I can tell you.
I'll take what you can give.
Everyone knows that self-storage is a recession-resistant asset class. I mean, we use this analogy all the time. When you talk to an office building owner or developer, they're, what are they going to tell you? They're going to tell you that a lot of people are working from home nowadays. People aren't coming into the office. That's like, the new thing. Although people are starting to come back into the office, people are working a lot from home. So, they're feeling it in the market. If you talk to an apartment building guy, what are they going to tell you? They're going to tell you that, okay, people are downsizing, a lot of people are moving, maybe they're not getting the rents that they thought they were going to get when they were first building, their project or were running the numbers on their project. In self-storage, when you go to the SSA, and we're going to be going to the SSA in 2 weeks from now, what are people talking about there? No one is talking about the market. No one is talking about whether people are renting stores or not. Everyone is always renting self-storage. If you're downsizing, you're going to be putting your things in self-storage. If people are, looking for smaller office spaces, okay, they're putting their stuff in self-storage. No one is talking about the market. People are talking about interest rates and how are you going to absorb the interest rates? When is the next rate cut? Questions that all other asset classes are asking. When are the interest rates going to come down? And the interest rates are a little bit burdensome on the numbers, but I feel like we've went through the worst of it and they're talking about lowering interest rates. Maybe in September, we'll see a rate cut. So I think that, we don't really talk about the market being affected by, the market that we're in right now. It's really just about interest rates and making the numbers work in self-storage, which is why I think it's the best asset class. I love, the asset class that we're in, and, we only focus on self-storage. So that's what I think. That's what I think about that.
I love that you brought this up, right? Obviously, we saw the COVID boom where rates went out of control during that 18-month period while COVID was in full force. We saw a regression to the mean after the COVID boom sort of ended, but relative to what some other asset classes are going through, Chris Berg, who I do a news report every week with, we talk about this every week. Given the headwinds that are happening for storage as far as the lack of movement in the housing market, interest rates having gone up, construction costs going up, everyone would love to have the problem self-storage has right now relative to what other people are going through. Question for you coming out of that, how important are the relationships that your father and you have built over your father, obviously 25 years, you over the last 5, 6, how important are those relationships now as you're maybe presenting something? Listen, in 2021, 2020, we were getting underwriting back. And, when you were getting interest rates on a construction loan at under 5% and, people were seeing the rates that were $2, $3 a square foot a month, everything looked like a 40 IRR and a 3 and a 5-year projection. You're not getting that level of return necessarily when you're underwriting. How important are the relationships that your dad's built and the track record that the Feldman Companies has over time, Ben, in helping you guys continue to expand now?
I think it's very, very important. And I think that, I think that when you're coming into this time period, I only had 1 year being able to work. When I first started working officially, it was 2021. That's when the rents started rising, drastically. Shortly after that was when the interest rates, rent started, coming down a little bit. Interest rates started going up. Now we're seeing them come down again. Rents look like they're coming back. Values are so I've been involved in the industry when it's sort of a sporadic time period. You know, my dad has been building self-storage, for over 25 years. So we've had, different capital partners and different third parties that we've worked with over the years that, when times are tough and you sort of want to pick a horse that's reliable, who you're going to be doing, people getting a little bit tighter with who they want to work with. So I feel like being the responsible developers that we are, our partners feel some sort of trust and feel like we're a reliable partner. And we've done very successful deals in the past. So we had a mindset coming into this time period that, we're going to push through it. I think that if you push through it, you're going to be rewarded in the end. And we did exactly that. So now we're in 2025. It's been 4 years since I've been working, and we have, a portfolio of self-storage deals, and we already made it through the storm, I guess you could say, with the high interest rates. They're talking about, like I mentioned, some rate cuts. I think with some rate cuts, you're going to see values starting to come back, starting to climb up. So I think that, what we ended up doing, we ended up working with our third parties. Our third parties were working with us. Our capital partners felt comfortable with us. We pushed through the storm, and I think we're going to get rewarded in the end. I think everyone's going to get rewarded, and that's what I think about that. And I think that values are going to come back. We'll see what the next step is, but it's a slow process. We say this so slow. It takes
I
a
love
long
that.
time to. It takes a long time to find a site that makes sense, to lock it up, to entitle it, to engage with your third parties, to engage with the civil engineer, with the architect, design the plans, and go to the municipality. Figure out what the municipality wants to see in their community, something that they want to be proud of. Working with the community to see, what kind of design do they want in their community. Getting it approved, then building the project. That takes another year, a year and a half. Leasing it up. It's such a slow process. So it's tough. And in this market, the market is changing week by week. Every
Yeah.
week, the market is different. It's crazy. So that's what I think about it. I think it's a slow process. You got to be on top of, the different stages, but you got to also be patient because it takes a lot of time. So
I love that. Your father came on the podcast for the first time almost 2 years ago now, and said the greatest quote that I've had in the podcast so far, which is real estate is a get rich slow game, right? And
totally.
that always stuck with me. And it's so interesting that you bring that concept up. I don't know if you ever watched the podcast he did, but it obviously is something that he talks about on a regular basis because you can't be in a rush. I want to dig into something you said that I thought was amazing, which is the words responsible development. I've been getting on my soapbox on the self-storage report that I do with Chris Berg every week about irresponsible development because it's kind of a challenge to the industry that I think can be avoided in many ways. So what I want to ask you is, what does it look like to be a responsible developer in self-storage as opposed to what might be irresponsible?
Right. So we use that term a lot, responsible development. And I feel like what that is we see it as like a triangle, as like a trifecta. You have the developer, you have the municipality, the politics, the planning and zoning, and then you have the community, right? The developer needs to work with the municipality and with the community and work together, figure out exactly what the community wants to see, on your project, what kind of design, they want it to look like, how big, how small. You got to work with the community and you got to have their input. And you also have to work with the municipality, with the commission, with the staff, council members to see what their vision is for the community, what kind of product they want to see. How do they want the outside of the building to look? Do they want it to look like the neighboring parcel? Do they want it to have Spanish tile on the roof? Do they want it a certain color? These are things that, it's important stuff that, long way when you work with the community and you work with with the staff and you work with the, the different members of the municipality to develop a product that they're proud of. Because at the end of the day, you have to build product that you're proud of and that fits in with the area. You see how we do it at the self-storage shows. Like we have all of our projects that we've ever built, at our booth, and some are smaller. Some look like a barn. Some look like a Miami style building. Some look like a modern style building. So you got to be able to build a product that you're proud of. And I think the only way to do that is by being open and working with the municipality and working with the community and getting everyone's input. So we talk about that a lot. So that is responsible development, and that's how we do it.
Great, great, great answer. It doesn't surprise me that you went so in depth on the answer. I appreciate that. Couple things I have left that I want to touch base, and it's hard to believe we've been talking for 25 minutes already, but I try and keep this to a half hour and honor your time and hopefully give a podcast that people actually have time to listen to. I want to ask about what you guys have done in the last year, which is you started to do a construction lending program. I want to know where that came from. Why did the Feldman Companies decide to get involved in that space? And what does it look like for you guys so far?
It has been very attractive around the self-storage industry. And yes, we did launch a financing program. And what that is 95% of the capital stack. So, the way how we came up with that program is similar to how we were talking about, how have we been adapting through this time period, through the storm? And, a little bit about, our relationships and sticking with our relationships. How have they been able to stick around with us and, having strong relationships in the industry? So over 25 years, we've developed different capital partners, made relationships with different debt funds that we've done lots of projects and different deals with in the past. And they've been very, very successful projects. And over this time period, our partners, they approached us and they said to us, we love the self-storage industry. We love what you guys are doing in self-storage. We want more exposure to self-storage. You guys are doing a lot of stuff. We're building 6 projects a year. We want to do more. We have the ability to do more. Let's come up with a program that gives us more exposure, that gets us in with the self-storage industry. So we figured out a way how to, come up with a program to do just that. And we came up with 95% financing. 95% financing. You see other companies doing it. And I feel like it's a great way for developers to get their projects, financed and underway. We're also a value add partner. We've been in self-storage for over 25 years. So we have our knowledge and background that we'd be able to assist, other self-storage developers with the self-storage project, picking up wherever they are, picking up whether they're in early stages entitlement, whether they're getting site plan, working on permitting and construction drawings, helping with VE or any other type of way how we can get involved and help. We're a value add partner, and it's been very attractive around the industry. And, that's just, we've been doing it for
Somebody wants to get involved and maybe put a project in front of you. What's the easiest way for them to do that?
The easiest way to do that is reach out, send us an email, send me an email. And
look at that. My guy Eric behind the scenes, he is right on top of things. That showed up on time. Eric, we appreciate you.
Yeah, reach out. You reach out to us, and we'll start diving into the project, figuring out where the developer's holding.
So I'm going to tell you, I was lucky enough to obviously work with S3 Partners, Barry Sherman, our director of development, Kristen Bryant, who's the one that's responsible for setting up all our debt on our projects, and got a chance to be in a meeting with you and Justin Biggs, who's one of your finance guys. And I'm just going to tell you, man, I wish I had a head on my shoulders at 26, 27 years old, the way you guys do, and was so wildly impressed with the way you handled yourself and carried yourself. Your dad was not on that call, which I thought was awesome. I should have been the way you handled it. So just to give you some kudos there. And I'm going to dig into this because one of the things that amazes me about you, and you're not the only one in self-storage that I think about. I'm thinking about Michael Pagoda of the Pagoda Companies up in Detroit, who was born into the industry Alex Burnham, who is actually going to air right after your episode airs next Wednesday. His is going to air the Wednesday we're at SSA, who's with Storage Mart, born into the industry. He's actually third generation. But it amazes me because I met you, as I said, you were less than a year in the industry. You and I started the same time in 2021. I met you at the SSA show. Your dad's a big deal. I mean, there's no other way to say that, right? When you walk around the SSA show with Mitch Feldman, everyone says hi. He knows everybody in the industry. Everyone has a tremendous amount of respect for him. And yet you carry yourself incredibly humbly. And so my question for you is, where does that come from? How does Jordan Feldman, you have your dad who's really successful, built a ton of great storage projects, and yet you carry yourself like saying hi to me like I was Joe Margolis, the president of Extra Space. I mean, you treated me just the same way. Where's that come from?
I appreciate that. And
I appreciate that, honestly.
For me, I still see myself just getting started in the industry. Like I said, we have a young core. Our team is all young bulls. We've got my dad, teaching everyone and spearheading everything, but just wanting to grow. I love real estate development, and honestly, just wanting to keep growing the business and just building more stuff. Honestly, I mean, I love what I'm doing, and that's pretty much it,
Jordan, man, it's palpable every time I talk to you, every time I see you. Really excited. We'll connect, less than a week and a half. We'll be out in Vegas. Really excited to see you guys and the team. And I know I've been bugging you for a while to get on here. You were a little resistant to me for a little while, but I'm very grateful. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming and sharing your knowledge and being willing to go on camera and have a chat with us.
I appreciate you getting me on here. I love doing the pod. It was honestly my first podcast that I ever done.
Wouldn't know by the way you handled yourself, my friend. I appreciate it so greatly. So guys, click the button below, subscribe to the channel to get all the updates that are coming. That's the YouTube channel. This will go live on YouTube on Wednesday next week. You'll be able to catch the live version here on LinkedIn. If you're watching live, we appreciate it. I am going to give a quick shout out to my buddies at Kiwi 2 Storage, Wayne Woolsey. They will be at the SSA show as well. Make sure you stop by their booth. We're very grateful. They've agreed to be the exclusive advertiser of the Stories Behind the Door podcast. If you need some steel for your self-storage project, there is no better place to go. Say hi to my buddies at Kiwi 2 Construction. He's Jordan Feldman, Director of Operations at the Feldman Companies. I'm Thaddeus Campbell. That is it for this week's episode of the Stories Behind the Door podcast. Thanks all for watching.